Hello and good evening for this Wednesday, May the 14th, 2025. We have just finished watching the 12th, the penultimate episode of Survivor 48, titled Icarus Time. But we're just getting started here on Super Mader Brothers Podcast, a live stream here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and you might be listening to us an audio version. I'm Dave Mader, joined with Jason, don't forget the R, Phillips. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Don't forget the R. That's right. Thank you for recognizing the R. It's like the hyphen in Spider-Man. It's good. It was finally some moves were made on this episode. Last week I sort of lamented that I was only enjoying this season because I'm winning my fantasy Survivor League, but I sort of had the realization that the last 5 episodes before this were pretty nothing episodes, but tonight we actually saw some moves made. Some things happened that, we'll get into it, but I think there's a bit of a discussion to be had about the moves that were made.
Yes, indeed. Spoilers if you have not finished watching this episode of Survivor 48, as this just finished airing. But Shaheen has been voted out here, sixth juror, I think, if I'm correct here. Yes, the 6th juror here on day 23 of Survivor 48. He wins the reward, takes Joe on the challenge, gets Joe fed, as Camilla tells us, and then Joe wins reward, but then they somehow are able to, they being Camilla and Kyle, are able to work this whole thing where they get Shaheen voted out tonight. Shaheen, yeah. Jason, what can you say about this guy's game and how everything went on? He was certainly entertaining. I got to give him that.
He was entertaining. He introduced the meta, referencing the sounds in the background of the score of the show. Cockatois, chica, bakucha, chica. So that was fun. But as far as his game went, I think that he was high on his own supply, because I didn't really see him play much of a game on television. I don't know if it behind the scenes, like off camera, he was making more moves, but he kept being like, I'm the best one here. When he left, he said, you all know that I'm the best person playing out here. And I really thought that he was taking a back seat to what is clearly the Joe and Eva game. And I didn't really feel like he had played a game. He was just a number for a long time, it seemed like. And Kyle and Camilla actually put their money where their mouth is. And after 10 episodes of them being like, we're working things from behind the scenes, I guess more like 6 episodes, they finally made a move and they used Joe's paranoia against him, which is very easy to do.
And okay, I don't know if this puts extra strategy on top of their whole under the radar game here, but Camilla in this vote does not vote Shaheen. Camilla votes Mitch. And so is this just to cover their trails? If you're Camilla and Kyle,
maybe. I didn't see who voted for who. I didn't catch the last part. Do you have the?
Oh well, I think we need to play Shaheen's final words here again. We just finished seeing them moments ago. He was distraught. He didn't. I don't think he saw this coming. Let's see.
Oh man. Oh, it's hard to believe that it's over, dude. Really hard to believe that it's over. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say right now. Hopefully I'm making a lot of my friends and family happy, and
you don't really see people with their head in their hands like that. Was this a blind side, or was this just
I think this
numbers?
Was a blind side. He demands a hug from every tribe member on the way out here after getting voted out. I can't remember that ever happening before. I think this really caught him off guard emotionally, and he was just like, whoa. I think he knew that there was this thing he had with Joe during the day, and he had vented to everyone else here, but I don't think he really saw this coming. I think that, he has this conversation with Joe, and he does have alarm about it, but he doesn't understand that how dangerous his game is at this point, how much in peril it is, as he clearly gets voted out here. And yeah, this exit interview, you see he's so broken up about it. And as you saw there, Camilla votes for Mitch, as did Shaheen. So this goes down, I guess, as a 4-2 vote, in the final 6. And yeah, that, I was a little confused earlier in the episode because I didn't realize that was just a reward challenge purely, that, and that it wasn't for immunity. But, it makes sense. It's such a long episode. And they needed to break this up into 2 challenges here. And Shaheen, who wins this incredible endurance challenge, then in the episode, it's really his episode in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's very much about Joe too in this episode, and we'll get into that. But yeah, Shaheen's like, he finds out about these letters from home. I have to have my letter. It's not just about the sanctuary with the burgers and whatever else. Was there a pie? I think there might have been a pie.
Cheesecake.
I'm sorry. It was a delicious cheesecake. That's right. It was delectable. But Shaheen's like, I want that letter from my mom. I can't go on without it. And so he even with the ganglion cyst in his wrist, he manages to hold on here, Jason, through the final thing. And then it's all just for some rest and food, which he gives to Joe, the biggest challenge beast in this game, who has been immune virtually for every vote, except for the last vote where they don't take him out. They're like, no, we have to get Mary out. That's much more important right now than getting out Joe. And so they took out Mary. Joe was left here, and then he takes him on the reward, to Camilla's point. He gets all fed up here, but they're still able to turn this around on him when he gets back. They being Kyle and Camilla. You say their secret, undisclosed alliance here. No one knows they're working together. No one sees them go off and talk. There's only so many options. Who do they think Camilla's with? Exactly.
I don't know. And what's frustrating for me, I have Joe as my MVP, but I have such a commanding lead in our fantasy league that I'm actively, for the sake of a better season, I've been rooting against him. And last week, when everybody was like, this is our opportunity to get Joe. Like he is a challenge beast. We don't know if he's just going to win again next time. And of course he did. They should have got him out then, but also it really drives me insane that, Shaheen wins. And then I don't know what his game plan was to keep Joe fueled. I don't know if he wanted to try to, spin something towards him to work with them, but they were already kind of working together anyway. So I don't know. It was just like a little bit of a respect thing with no foresight. It's like, I'll show you this guy that I respect because I know he wants the letter from his kid, but he's also going to literally eat a hamburger, which is like the best protein you can get in this whole game. Right? Like
Shaheen needed this immunity. Because that's why I was watching with Jane. Jane has Shaheen in the draft, our draft. And I was like, okay, well, Shaheen really needed to win this more than Kyle, who was the other finalist in that reward challenge. But, and Kyle's also been like not winning every immunity, but I think he won a couple, and he's been doing well.
I think he won last week, didn't he?
I believe so. Yeah. The previous immunity, right? Is that what we're trying to figure out?
Yeah. Because I don't know,
Camilla,
from any play standpoint what that accomplishes other than just here's some respect. Maybe, he thought Joe was going to get voted out while Shaheen's still in the game. So maybe on jury, he'll remember that. There's also this narrative that if they vote Eva out, she's going to stand for Joe, but that's only one vote. I don't think that Eva's going to be able to sway the whole jury if it comes down to it. There's a lot of really weird assumptions. These are all super fans of Survivor at this point. They're all fans of Survivor at least, and none of them seem to be playing the game properly. They're playing this weird, let's all be friends. And we've talked about this endlessly this season, but this was another example of that. Joe's a very sensitive guy, but also he is an idiot. Like if you just turn the screwdriver on him a little bit, he falls down. So there's another universe where he comes out and plays this game and has no allies, and he's gone early because you feed him a little bit early on in the game, and then he loses his mind with paranoia and leaves. The only reason he made it this far is because nobody's really pushed. And the two times in the last few episodes that they have pushed a little bit, he starts like spiraling almost immediately. When Kyle was spinning starting to spin the lie to him, he goes right to Shaheen, and he's just venting at Shaheen about basically nothing, doing this weird thing where he's like, if you want to tell me something, now's the time. And Shaheen's like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Also, are we still doing the plan? And he's like, moping around and acting all weird and crazy. And then Shaheen kind of also has his own problems with flying off the handle. So he goes and vents to every single other person. So I don't know. This was one of those times sorry to have this.
No, keep going. I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, really.
We have this situation where Shaheen and Joe are just throwing the end of this episode up in the air so much that going into the tribal, I actually lost the plot on who they were going to vote out. And I didn't think it was going to be Shaheen, and I forgot about the Mitch stuff. And I was like, surely they have to vote Eva out because she's not on the chopping block. Like, surely there's got to be at least her name written down. But no, some people were still going for the Mitch plan, and then other people, 4 people, I guess, were like,
but why not Camilla?
I don't know.
Why is she not in the conversation? Why is not even Kyle in the conversation for some of these people? Namely Shaheen, or even Joe and Eva. Why aren't they do we really want to be with Kyle at the final 3? Can Kyle beat us? Like, probably not, unless Joe is self-aware enough to know that he's in a great position. It seems like, according to Shaheen in this episode, Eva won't win at the end, and that her game won't be respected enough, or she won't be articulate enough. Now, that's Shaheen's opinion. I don't know if that's sort of what the whole jury would see, but even if, let's say that's true, so they're not worried about voting out Eva right now. Because
that's what they were saying. If we can vote Eva, it'd be easy, but then she'd be a vote for Joe. But like, I'm sitting there going, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's one vote. It doesn't matter.
Vote. And I think that Joe, like you saw here in this challenge, when Eva went out on the reward challenge, when she put her feet up to use the leverage up there, Joe the edit almost gave us this impression that Joe intentionally tanked that reward challenge and dropped out on purpose. And then, but why? Because he ends up going on the reward with Shaheen. And Eva stays behind. So
I noticed that too, because I looked away for a second. Did she just put her feet up and then you have to just have your feet hanging, right?
Right.
And it immediately looked like he just dropped. And I think that he had as good a shot as the other final two to win it. So I don't know if he's just still trying to show solidarity to Eva as a game plan, since it wasn't for immunity. Maybe he was just like solidarity. Maybe, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, he got real emotional when Jeff said you're going to get letters. So I don't know. This episode had a weird air.
It did. Okay. This whole segment in the episode with Joe and his sister, who was murdered many years ago, and they'd had this whole falling out the day of that, and there's this whole segment in the episode where he's kind of talking to her, into like praying basically, to her memory, talking about all his regrets. I can't remember anything like this ever being on a Survivor episode before this, and I think that it's the story of this season could be that Joe sacrifices his whole game here. He ultimately doesn't win it because he wants Eva to win it. He's referred to Eva even as sis on occasion. And, could he be projecting his late sister onto Eva in some way? and trying to atone for whatever sins he thinks he's committed in his life or in regards to that. And, it's, and the whole thing with him tanking that challenge tonight, I think maybe I'm just seeing a pattern here. Maybe that, we'll see how this will play out.
I do agree with that to some degree. I also feel like, even if Joe and Eva make it to the final 3 and they're sitting, whoever they're with might have a better shot than those two, even though Joe's playing a great Survivor game, like on the surface, they've indirectly pissed off every single person on that jury in a irreparable way, because everybody has been like, we have to do something about them, and then a bunch of stuff happens and somebody else gets kind of shit
and
out
they never
bottom.
do anything about them, or even really get a plan. And anytime there's kind of even a fake plan in motion, it kind of blows up in that person's face other than theirs. But I guess what I keep wondering to me is, okay, let's say even all that's true. If Eva's at the end, if Eva's in the final 3, and we can debate who's next to her, but can she win without, like, not Eva's there without Joe, I guess is my question.
If Eva sits with Kyle and Camilla will talk about how they had the secret alliance the whole time. And I don't know if that works in their favor necessarily, because they didn't really make any moves except for tonight. They kind of made Joe freak out. Did Joe vote for Shaheen?
Joe voted for Shaheen. Yeah.
So they orchestrated that for sure. I think Joe was ready to keep up the status quo, go for the next person, the next weakest person, which would have been Mitch. Kind of next person at the bottom who doesn't, do much, but has a personality story for the end. I don't know. It's tough to say. I don't really like any of the people left winning, except for maybe Camilla. I just like her. She
was kind of fun in this episode, at least.
Yeah.
She's running the bus over the people, turning reverse. She's going after them all. I find that
to be kind of fun.
I find it could be, she's kind of, that was kind of a fun segment in the episode. Okay, what if it's Eva, Camilla, and Mitch? And so somehow that's the final 3.
I think Eva.
It's Eva, right?
Yeah, because she can just be like, me and Joe ran the game the whole time, and she'll be able to pull something out of her butt to figure it out. She's not articulate, but I think that she can make a good case for being good at challenges and stuff. I don't know that she's actually won many. How many?
How many challenges has Camilla's won? Joe won. David. I think Eva won 1 immunity in this. Kyle's won immunity before too. It's been so long since they've merged too.
Yeah, I don't know. This the ending. I'm back with you guys the last couple of times I've been on, where you guys were like, this season it's just won't stop. And I was high on my own supply, as I said, and now I'm on the other side. I've secured my victory, and now I'm watching it because I asked my wife tonight. I was like, now that I'm realizing that the season's kind of like whatever, is this how you felt since she lost her MVP like a while ago, and it's kind of just like frustrated. She was like on her phone the whole time, like doesn't even really care anymore. And I'm like, I'm on a podcast tonight, I gotta pay attention, but nothing's happening. So is this just a bad season that started out really strong, I guess?
I don't know. Like I go back and forth. I'm not as down on it as maybe my brother is. And my brother can sometimes get Jaemeel going. If you want to look at it in just sort of, they're playing Survivor and it's fun. And
that's how I would watch it. Anyway.
This is a dynamic, kind of thing. Every time it's a new experiment, you're kind of a shake and bake with the cast and see what's going to pan out here. And I think that this final 5 we have going to the finale is kind of interesting to me. I think that it's not dull. I think that if Mitch somehow wins or Camilla wins somehow or Eva even, I think that I'll say, okay, that was that season and I get it.
does this last 6 people that we saw in this episode, does this remind you of a traditional Survivor team, or does this feel like new Survivor to you? Because I'll just say, this felt like traditional Survivor up until a couple of weeks ago when I was like, they're really just not going to make the play on Eva or Joe. They're just really going to coast through. Like, how do you feel about that?
To me, it feels like more like season 1 Survivor. Like this alliance that Kyle and Joe and Eva and who's the four? Oh, Shaheen formed here. It kind of felt like that was meant to be like their version of like the Sue, Richard, Rudy alliance, Kelly Wigglesworth. And I can't remember when they turned on Sue. Sue was like the first one they voted out prematurely. Or did they actually managed to get to the 4 together? And here Shaheen is cut at 6. So, I guess it's not Survivor 1.0, maybe like 1.5. And then they turn around here and they do vote Shaheen out. It was kind of, but based on this lie. And even in the episode, you see Joe talking to Eva on the beach. Like, maybe Camilla and Kyle are working together and they're just playing us.
It's not the first time this has happened either, when people have gone like, are they working together? Couldn't be. And it's like, you're playing Survivor and you watch Survivor. You have to think about every angle. They write off so many little things like that this time around.
Well, like, that's the thing, is that like Joe goes to Shaheen with this story and Joe's like, what's up? And I know that Joe's a firefighter and not a cop, because he would make a very bad cop, because like Shaheen doesn't know what he's talking about, doesn't go along with it. And Joe's cues are all wrong. And then he even says what the truth is out loud to Eva. They both contemplate it and they must have decided, no, we trust that Kyle and Camilla, because 2 people told me the same thing. Therefore, this worked here.
Yeah,
and
because then he's like, "I'm gonna go. Okay, are we good? I'm gonna go talk to Camilla now." And then Camilla's like, can't even contain herself. She's like, got the dumb. She's a terrible liar. And then I don't believe in fate, and I don't believe in like messaging from the universe or whatever, but as she's lying, a palm frond just falls down almost right on her head, and I'm like, that's a little bit crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and so I think that there's some fun gameplay here, because Joe is this kind of, you're right, a player that normally wouldn't get to where he is in the game unless certain circumstances happen to him. He has the strong ally in Eva. He happens to have this very poignant story. He's always been in control. No one's coming for him. And, he gets here into this, he gets played here by Camilla and Kyle. And so I think that this was an entertaining episode in some ways. I think that this was, like, what else do you want out of Survivor? I think sometimes, I know, Jeff's not here, so he's not here to defend his point of view, but often I feel like he wants all these players to all be like sort of more at the pro level. We're at season 48 after all, and this can't be like amateur hour. We got to play 3-dimensional chess here. And sometimes people are just kind of playing checkers.
Yeah, but what you have to realize too, though, is like we're only 10 seasons into like Jeff's version of the game, which is every season has felt like a soft reboot of the whole idea of Survivor. Since the pandemic. Before the pandemic, that's when the pro level people were playing. That's when every season was kind of outdoing the previous season with things. And we, not for nothing, we've seen a lot of like cool moments happen within this season even alone. Like Mary stayed in the game, Sue, what was her name? The girl at the start who was really annoying. Say stayed in the game. I think she played her shot in the dark, or Mary played her shot in the dark. Somebody got their shot in the dark through Mary, yeah. And Say stayed, and like, oh yeah, because they had that thing where the votes, the way the votes shook out, Cedric had to just choose somebody to go home. Like, we've seen things that were cool in this season. I just think that post merge, it's been really like, I don't know. Can you, as somebody, like, I haven't watched this. I haven't watched every season of Survivor, and you seem to have more of a, like, you can recall at an encyclopedic level more than I
Sometimes
can.
I'd
Than
say
I
Jaemeel
can.
and Jeff are more expertise
But
in
have
that
you
level. But there's always Wikipedia or Survivor wikis, So.
right? But why? Like, has there ever been like a season like this before, or is this still pretty new feeling?
I'd say this whole last 10 years, or no, it's actually less than that because it's like since pandemic,
5 years.
right? It's
Yeah.
5 years, but it feels like 10.
It's 10 seasons though, because
10
it's 2
seasons,
seasons,
right? Or
yeah.
this is the 8th season of this era, in the 40 era, and like it's a shorter season. It's only a 27-day season. It's been a different vibe in a lot of ways. There's been no themes like that, and a lot of the contestants, players, have been sort of not that pro level. We don't have Boston Rob every season. We don't have like this kind of expertise coming in. So you get more of a clumsy game, and I think that is more fun to watch. It depends. It's not that different than sports really, because when I watch like curling, for instance, if I may.
That's not what I thought you were going to say, but okay.
I really enjoyed watching the pro curling on TV, like the Briar and everything back like 20, 30 years ago, because back then everyone was more of an everyman or woman, if you will. Like it was kind of just like, no, these were everyday people. They have day jobs, but they're coming out and they're trying, and they'd make mistakes and whatever. But they had more personality and they had more grit, and maybe weren't top-notch athletes, but were entertaining to watch. And you really felt it when they won. And now, like when I watch it, it's so commercialized. The players are like got the ultimate fitness regime. They're kind of basically our pro players, and so that aspect of it has been sort of lost. And so I think that but some people like that more. Some people like saying, I want the best, I want the elites, I want the best of the best going at it. I think that's kind of what we have here in Survivor, is we have appetite for two different kind of styles. It's almost like we want a minor league Survivor, but then we want all-stars, major time Survivor. And I think the public and certain parts of the fandom are very hungry for an all-star season.
Yeah, I just as a side note, I lived next to you. Colleen Jones is.
Oh yes, Colleen Jones,
I lived next to her in Halifax when I was like 16.
Nova Scotian legend.
She just had a day job. You're right. She was just a person, and she had a family and a nice house next to my shitty
she went
apartment.
To the CBC as well, but yeah, she went to Secretarial College in Nova Scotia with my mom, and then
crazy.
And then I think she dated my uncle's, who's not my uncle, but he married my aunt by marriage, by blood rather. So he's my uncle by marriage. His brother was like engaged to her for a bit, but they didn't get married. But that's connections.
Halifax, that's hilarious.
Small town, right?
Small town, yeah. But I think that there will be a ripple in the whole new era situation if they do an all-star from just the new era. Bring back some of the people we liked from the last 5 years or so. I don't know if it makes sense now because it's been so long, like to bring any of the classic people back, because they were already getting up there in years when they were playing the last all-star. Like, I don't want to see 45-year-old Ozzy play.
I think it gets dull to see a player get that many chances to win, because I think eventually it's like, well, of course, eventually they're going to figure it out. Boston Rob eventually won just because he played so many times.
Played like five times.
Not because he's the greatest player ever by any means, So it's like in the CFL, every team wins the Grey Cup eventually. In
fact, the last time Ozzy played, he got voted out like third because people were like, he still got it, and we know what happens.
Exactly. And, so I do like when they do returning players to a degree, although it's always a different vibe, because the contestants, when they come back, they know what to expect. They can have pre-game alliances, which I think is an ongoing problem in Big Brother and Survivor. And so having just, fresh, 18 people every season is kind of avoids all that kind of, gaming of it all, and so there you get these moments like this season where you're like, why is no one targeting Kyle? Why is no one talking about? I know Joe's immune, but like at least pick off Eva, so he doesn't have this number going into the finals, or somebody who's definitely going to take him to the finals if she wins. You know, like don't give him 2 chances to go to the final 3. You know.
Yeah, like Mitch versus Camilla making fire is going to be a train wreck. I feel like, because I don't think either of those 2 people will be good there. So Eva and it's like Eva and Joe go to the final and put those 2 up against for fire, and then Joe wins the whole thing. Like that's.
You're thinking they'll vote out Kyle next?
Yeah, yeah, because Kyle actually, surprisingly, he's a very articulate. He's a lawyer, and he can definitely outwit on the final like in a final 3 situation, because he can just spin everything that he's done. The few things that he's done, he can at least spin it and explain it in a way that might sway the jury a lot more than, as much as it sucks to say, I don't think Mitch is going to be very good in the explaining why he won a game, both because he hasn't done anything. He's been a swing vote player, a sheep or a goat or whatever they're called, basically through the whole game. And also he's got his speech impediment, which the whole time people are very understanding of, but at crunch time, it will probably be a detriment to him. And I base this off of seeing my dad, who had a stroke, the way that people treat him when he's trying to get something out in stressful situations. They just don't have time for it, which is unfortunate. And I recognize he's a fighter and he's a very strong individual, but I just think that he's not equipped for the $1 million question.
Yeah, it's interesting because they keep saying in these segments where like Shaheen was talking to Joe, like, we can't take Mitch to the end. Everyone's going to vote for Mitch to win. Everyone likes him. What a nice guy. What a great guy. Isn't he great? Doesn't everyone love Mitch? But I'm like, why would you want to vote for Mitch? Yeah, to your point, he's been this floater goat kind of a player. Like he's likable, but strategically he doesn't have a game to really hang anything on. He talks in this episode, we need to make moves. I need to make a move. And I'm like, you needed to make a move a while ago, Mitch. Like if you and he doesn't really do anything in this episode. Even though he's telling us in his confessionals that, I'm bringing it. Wait, I'm coming out of here. So I'd say he's, for me, like the least interesting or the least likely even winner of the group here in this final 5, which means he could be in the final. He could be the one you take, with you if you win the final 4 immunity, and then he gets no votes, I don't think, in that situation, because he'll be seen as being brought to. Now, if he somehow, I don't know, if he wins the final 4 immunity and then he plays the fire-making thing right, I don't know. Maybe he's got an outside chance, but even then,
I've seen crazier things happen, like that one guy who was basically spent the whole game on exile and then came back and won fire making and then won Survivor. So
that's right. That was the only time Jaemeel ever won our Survivor draft. Was that guy did this unlikely thing, because we thought he was out and then he came back from the dead and won the whole thing.
I just, as a kind of a side note, as just to put a cap on the way the game is played and the way the game is presented to us. Did you see the vote question for this week? You hit the QR code and you go vote.
No, I missed all that. What happened?
It's there was 2 questions. There was 1 question, two answers. Do we keep idols or do we take away idols? And I learned they didn't introduce immunity idols until China, till season 11. I thought there was an idol from the beginning, but that is only 30 seasons old, which is wild.
I did know that. Well, I don't know if I knew it was specifically China until you said that, but I knew it was pretty early, but not the originals, like few seasons, like so 11, but that's only probably 6 years into Survivor, I guess, at that point. Yeah. There's like, I feel like they've had too many. I don't know if you need to give an immunity idol even in the pre-merge necessarily, like because it causes all this problem and like whatever else. Everyone knows they have it, and then when you make them have to work for it so hard, it's on these journeys and whatever. I feel like it's gimmicky, and I would just cut down on that kind of stuff. I'm okay, like if there's one human immunity idol somewhere in the jungle, and if someone digs it up and they find it, good for them, and then they can play it at the right time. But less is more with the immunity idols, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I would like, and I feel like everyone knows that Eva has an idol, and I feel like that's been a big part of why this season's played out the way it has.
Well, that's what resonated with me about finding out that it seems like Jeff wants to do a season 50 that is just the same as season 1, where there's as little extras as possible. Like they start with nothing, no idols, and you have to just play Survivor based on alliances and stuff. And that's what it feels like he's kind of pushing the audience towards. And then this season, the idol becomes a non-factor because it's Eva has it and she's protected by Joe for this most of the second half of this game. So there's no politics around idols. I mean, tonight they literally kind of used politics around idols to lie to Joe, but I'm getting this vibe that they're trying to let me ask you this, because I believe in the back of my head that there is a lot more influence from the production than what we'll ever even know because of just the nature of reality TV. Okay.
Right.
So I'm when I watch Survivor, and this isn't like, nobody's ever said this outright, like how wrestling is fake. You know what I mean? Survivor is still real. The kayfabe has not been broken on Survivor. Right. But in the back of my head, there's been times where I'm like, that feels really like they positioned things to make a story out of nothing. And it's happened in this season. That there was one episode where the whole time they were trying to, obviously this one person was going home, and the whole episode they're spinning it just to like create drama and create tension. Mm-hmm. And then it's still a foregone conclusion. And how do you feel about that idea when you watch Survivor? Like, do you treat it like it's all 100% real and you don't even have that inkling in the back of your head? Or are you like me?
I used to have that more in the early years because this was admitted in interviews and things like that. I would see where they would say, well, sometimes the cameras weren't there when this conversation happened. So we'd run up and we'd get them to kind of repeat their conversation again or kind of reenact what they said. And at the time that kind of bothered me more, but as time's gone on, I think about that less and less. I think in Survivor in particular, because compared to Big Brother, which I know you don't watch, but these shows have so much in common, but are so different in some key ways. And one of them is the fact that Big Brother is this 24/7 live feed show where this entire community can watch what is happening behind the scene to a degree. Now, we don't, like when they go into their version of the confessionals in Big Brother, it's called the diary room. The audience, the live feeders, they can never see that, right? All we hear is like when they come back out and they tell the other contestants, like, production said this to me, production told me don't say this, So you get a lot of hearsay and things like that. But based on just that show and how much that show really shows the behind the scenes kind of thing, I have to think that Survivor has a lot in common, or a lot of the same practices in terms of when production gets involved. And so I don't think that they're influencing the votes or who's getting voted out or who's going to find an idol or something like that, because I don't think they're trying to put their thumb on the scale for anyone in particular to win. But I think that they have their stories that they want to tell. I think that they prompt these contestants with certain questions. When they're in their little confessionals, like, what do you think about, Joe? And, could he be having something secret he's not telling you? And this kind of stuff. And you start putting these thoughts into the players' heads, and then they start, sort of manifesting those things into the game, right? So production can sort of manipulate without even telling them, like, go out there and say this or do this specifically. Just nudge them in these directions. And but how much to measure that by is almost impossible to tell, because unless you would review every one of those conversations. And
Yeah,
the last thing with that is
that answers my question.
everyone, I understand that everyone who goes on these shows, like CBS specifically, makes them sign contracts that say you can't talk about how the sausage is made once you're off there. We will sue you if you say, like, production would ask these kinds of questions, or the ins and outs of the casting process, for instance, and whatever.
Yeah, it feels like they sanction who you're allowed to talk to while the show is still airing too. There's one podcast that I've seen that after people are voted out, they're allowed to go do their post-show interview while the show's still airing. There's one podcaster that I saw that does that. And then also there's I hear on the radio occasionally there's an on Global, there's like, come talk to us tomorrow morning where we break down last night's episode and talk to so-and-so. So it's interesting that nobody's ever spilled the beans, but I don't want to come off like a conspiracy theorist. It's more of like the reality of reality TV. So the only reason I bring this up is because this season specifically feels so weird, with Joe's story and Eva's story, and then them working in tandem, and then nobody going for their throats in literally Survivor. That's the only reason. Normally, I don't even think about it. I'm like, it could be or it's not. It doesn't matter. It's Survivor. I love Survivor. But this season has been so bizarre.
Well, and that's where, I do see the side of the coin with Jeff and Jaemeel, where they're like, what are you doing? What? Like, Joe why was getting a Mary last vote important? Why did that make sense? It didn't. Right. But I think it's partly because of the idol. I think Eva's got the idol. Will Eva play the idol on Joe? If Eva plays it on Joe and then somehow I get voted out based on the second most amount of votes, then won't that be the most awful thing ever? I guess, but what's your alternative? To sort of like stick with this alliance until you get to the finals and you lose to Joe? Or like Joe's just going to win every immunity out here because he's just that much better than everyone else in these challenges.
And in the first episode, we see Joe and Eva say to each other, well, it'll be nice to compete against you one day. Maybe I'll have to come after you. And they laugh about it. And then in literally the next time on for this episode, Camilla is telling Kyle, basically like breaking up with him, being like, look, I don't know if I see you sitting next to me. I don't know if it's good for my game. And I'm going, keep working together. You have to get. You don't really have a choice,
Camilla. Yeah. If you're not with Kyle, who are you with? Like exactly. You're with Eva. You're with Joe. Like you're with Mitch. Is that what's happening here? You just voted for Mitch in this previous vote.
Kyle, Camilla, Mitch is like the most toss up final three.
And they're from the same tribe. They're from the original tribe together, and they're not cohesive at all here. And somehow Eva and Joe, their duo feels so much more powerful than their trio, if you can call it that. Let's have a look at the next episode because I don't know what Camilla's plan here was. I was kind of a little surprised, like you were, but maybe I'll get it more on the second viewing.
This is it. It's electric.
Next time on the season finale of Survivor.
Everything you got!
My best shot is if we don't sit next to each other.
Hearts are going to be broken.
It's an epic showdown.
Well, it's pretty brief. My best shot is if we're not sitting next to you at the end. Okay, so Camilla, you want to sit next to what, Mitch and Eva? Is that what you want? Okay, how are you going to achieve that exactly?
Eva wins those three.
How are you going to get out Kyle and Joe in succession? Right? Like you have to. I guess they can't both be immune at the same time, right? So you get out one. And then you hope that the other one isn't immune in the final challenge. That's the only way. But why even put that out there to Kyle? Like, why say
Kyle
that
goes, okay, well, then I'll use my scrappiness to get you out.
Kyle's connections run deeper than hers, as far as I can tell, with these players. Yeah. So, if that feels like... But it seems like, from what I could tell in that clip, Camilla is speaking presumably directly to Kyle, right to his face, right? Not to like a producer or something like that. So that kind of surprised me. That I agree. Keep working together.
Or it's one of those things where we watch the next episode and like it's taken completely out of context.
Maybe it is. Maybe it's just to get us going here. Like
I treat those next time ons as like that's my headcanon until I see otherwise.
Yeah, because I think for me the outcome I would like to see just as a person watching the show is Camilla to win this season. I think that would be the most interesting. I have Kyle in the draft. Honestly, I find Kyle not the most rootable. Just like he's fine, and him and Camilla are doing their thing, but I don't love him, I guess. It's nothing personal. Well, I guess it is personal, but I can't really put my finger on why.
I thought he was going to be a nothing player when they in that opening, the first island excursion, and he broke the bottle. I was like, and he's just kind of a doofus, and he gave me the ick a little bit, and then he's just
that whole story how he went to the jail, and then
that was all weird too. It felt even still very privileged.
yeah, it felt privileged. Like I did, hard time, but not really.
You went to jail for like a few months and still were able to get your law.
And then I became a teacher. Don't tell anyone I'm a lawyer.
Yeah,
like then everyone will be like,
I was a teacher for like a month. Yeah,
as we talked about in the last podcast, Camilla's like, oh, impressive.
Anyway, so who are we getting out tonight?
yeah, like never mind. I'm a software engineer, but that's nice. They're both noble professions.
It was very Jurassic Park where Newman's like, I've got a Barbasol thing filled with dinosaur eggs, and everybody's see, nobody cares.
Exactly. Okay, I don't know what else to say in regards to the episode we watched tonight.
The game, I wanted to talk about the game a little bit, the immunity challenge, because I thought it was awesome. I thought that one specific part of it was the best thing I've ever seen, and that's where they had to get up on a barrel like they were in a circus.
Yes.
And roll the barrel, and
you had to throw this rope, and then you had to pull yourself while you're walking on a barrel. There's no way I could have done this. I would have sucked at the barrel walking. Like
I'm surprised the people that were left were able to do it, and it was proof that if you're fed, you have hand-eye coordination, because Shaheen destroyed it, and then Joe destroyed it right after him.
And who was the third person? It would have been Kyle, and he did He did okay at it too, right? I think he was the next into it. And everyone who wasn't, it was Camilla, Eva, and Mitch, right? They were. Mitch was okay at it too, but a little bit behind. And
Eva couldn't get the first rope off the thing. She kept whipping her sack up in the air.
Yeah. What was that? Yeah, because she's a really good hockey player, right? Like she plays with the guys' team, but I don't think she's much of a baseball player because she can't seem to throw this thing up in the air. It was kind of funny watching her miss, the target over and over again. If she just stayed under it and sort of launched it underhand with two hands, I think there's no way you miss, right? Just like the launch there, but yeah, the challenge, the wheelbarrow thing was fun. We've seen that.
Had you seen the wheelbarrow thing before?
No, the wheelbarrow thing was new. The thing I had seen before was the end part where they had the snake and they had to go. And that ended up being Joe was barely had the learning curve, but some people learn it pretty fast, and Joe was one of them. Yeah, he was like, "Oh, okay, okay, boom, and boom, okay." And I think was it Eva who kind of caught up a little bit, even though she was really behind in certain parts of the obstacle course.
I don't know. I was focused because Joe was in the lead, and I was like, "Joe's got it. He's fine." What I thought was funny was Jeff was. It was a pretty slow challenge. Like you had to kind of think about what you were doing with all three parts, like going underneath the net was really slow, and you have to do Jeff is running back and forth so fast, and he runs down. He's like, okay, you get to move on, and then turns and runs back. And I was just finding it's the juxtaposition between slow a lot of the parts of the challenge were, and Jeff just like going crazy, I thought was really funny. As far as the game went, Joe pretty much just had it. I didn't clock anybody else even really catching up to him because nobody could
they
really
tried
get
their
the hang
best
of
in
it.
the edit to give us this idea that Joe had a bit of a race at the end, but he didn't. You're right. He was far away with that. And then Camilla's like, Shaheen's so dumb. He brings Joe on this and he gives him food and sleep. And then he wins this challenge, and then we're going to vote Shaheen out, And I think that's exactly right, And I wonder if Shaheen today has come to that realization that, he kind of I guess he took his friend, That's why he chose that. It wasn't strategic. He wasn't really thinking. He wasn't willing to cut Joe yet. I think that was the other part of this season is okay, what, Eva's got the idol, but I think that the big power thing with Joe was Shaheen. And that's what's so amazing here, that they're able to get Joe and Eva to turn on him. But they kind of, did it in a smart way. They played their cards right. And so I hope that from that standpoint, Camilla wins. And I guess Kyle would be an okay option, but on the other hand, I would almost rather see Eva win, or I don't know. Mitch doesn't feel like a fun winner to me. Mitch feels like
Mitch feels like it won't. I won't be mad if he wins. I just won't understand how.
Yeah, I won't be mad. I'll just be disappointed. I think is what I'll come out with Mitch. Confused, perhaps. We'll see how all that goes. But
if Joe ends up winning, he's my MVP in the fantasy rules. I get 50 straight up points. So if he ends up winning the whole thing, and I'm already 200 points in the lead ahead of everybody, I might get the highest win, highest win difference in the history of our fantasy, and we've been playing for 66 or 7 years. That would be a big bump.
Because here's the thing. If Joe wins this season, and I think there's a good chance he will, I think that he has a high likelihood as a winner in that scenario of being asked to come back.
Yes.
And I think that if Joe does come back as a winner, past winner, that he's a very likelihood to be voted out first.
People will know how to mess with him because they'll be oh, he's a sap. And then also, if you talk in his ear, you do one of these ones into his ear with paranoia, he loses his mind. That scene during Tribal where people were talking about paranoia and they were just doing the sound effect thing.
Yeah, what was that? What was happening? I was is he the Terminator? Is he going to snap?
I said to Madison, I was like, is this going to be the first person to ever go home with the immunity necklace because he lashes out and chokes somebody?
Yeah, I was
he lunges.
I was just when does Joe snap, and why would he snap at this? When he's but I guess they were trying to give us this idea that the ringing in his ears represented some kind of lie detecting abilities, but he obviously got that wrong because he thought Shaheen was lying and Kyle was telling the truth, which was quite the opposite. Well, Kyle wasn't even really. Kyle was just giving a generic answer about whatever Jeff was asking him about. But I don't know. It was I was confused by that edit. I don't really know where that was coming from with Joe. Joe's a crazy man, I guess, and maybe Joe will somehow sink his game at the end with just this kind of bizarre, unhinged rant. Is that where we're headed with Joe?
Maybe he just freaks out at the beginning of the last episode, and everybody's like, "Okay, well, we have to get him out immediately."
So Joe, who knew? I thought he was all right, but I guess not. But unless something like that happens, I think Joe could very well win, especially if he's in the final 3. I think he will win. He'll probably get a unanimous win. In all likelihood, because they'll just say, "Oh, he won every challenge; he deserves it,"
And he sat at the top of the game for most of even before the merge. Him and Eva were kind of running roughshod, so I think he played the best game out of everybody left, but I think he also played the best game out of a lot of people that played this season. I think he just found something that worked and just ran with it. But we'll see. We got one more episode, and it's going to be a long one.
Yeah, well, and I just want to mention. So we'll have, I think, the whole crew back next week. Foster said he'll be back. We'll have my brother back. We'll have hopefully Jaemeel and Becky back as well. Foster has 2 chances to win next week, so let's see if that comes true for him. I have one. Daryl, our friend, is Joe, and the other one is Camilla, Team Jaemeel. So Jaemeel could win this whole thing. It could be a second win.
Wow.
All right. What's going on tomorrow night on Hey, Did You See This One?
Well, it's still Steve's birthday month. Friend and contributor to the United Federation of Podcast, World Mind himself, Chris Murphy, is on the show.
Oh, wow.
And we're talking Lost in Space, the 1998 sort of remake reboot of the, I guess, 1960s television show, Danger, Will Robinson. So that's coming up tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it pretty much wherever you get your podcast video. It goes live on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and all that. The audio version goes up on Friday, and I'm going to start a release schedule. It's based off that last episode I was telling you about. You're getting a bunch of views. Sunday is going to be when the video on demand version goes up going forward, because it seems to be our sweet spot. Also, you're up in 2 weeks.
I am in 2 weeks.
Jumanji, yep.
Jumanji, so what is that, the 28th or 29th?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
2 Thursdays from tomorrow
I'm
is
gonna have
for
to,
Jumanji.
I'm going to have to get somebody to mend or to tend the podcast over at Live Long and Podcast, our Star Trek channel under the United Federation of Podcast banner, if you didn't know. All kinds of Star Trek content all the time. Tomorrow night, we are talking about Star Trek The Next Generation episode Q Who, which was the introduction of the Borg. So look out for that. That's a pretty fun episode. Have you ever seen that one, Jason? I know you're not much of a Trekkie, but
I don't know. The introduction of the Borg, I feel like I have probably seen, but I couldn't tell you what the plot of the episode is. I assume the Borg cube just appears, and they're like, "What the hell?"
Q's like, "You guys think you know how to explore space? You know, you think you're ready for what's out here?" And Picard's like, "Yeah, of course we are. You know, of course we are." And he's like, "Oh, you got arrogance." And then Whoopi Goldberg's there is Guinan. And you know, she's like, she does this to Q, and Q's like, "Watch out for this creature, Picard. You don't know what she could do." We're like, "What could she do?" And we never find out. But and then Q snaps his fingers, and he flings the Enterprise across the galaxy, and he says, "I'll show you what's out here." And he shows the Borg.
Oh, okay.
This race of cybernetic beings that assimilate everyone into the collective, and they all become part of the hive mind. So
and that's like the Borg are the ultimate villain in the whole Star Trek universe, because they're the most destructive and scary. They're kind of like the xenomorphs.
Yeah, they're like the Cybermen in Doctor Who, if you're familiar with that as well. Like, yeah, because it's kind of worse than dying, because then you get kind of turned into this drone and part of the Borg hive mind, and your individuality is suppressed, but you're still, and you never get to sleep, and it's not great. It's
not great.
Gets itchy on the skin.
Yeah,
with the implants, so it's all that. Oh, also on this channel, Jason, on Sunday we did a review of the Thunderbolts and the Mary Maynard Marvel Society. You, me, and Davin. Go and listen to that, or check that out.
It was good. It was a good time.
If you haven't already, yeah, it was great times. Okay, well, I think that's it for tonight. If I haven't missed anything, happy long weekend to you out there.
Hell yeah, brother.
In the Canadians.
May 2-4, buddy.
Maybe you'll enjoy some burgers and some cheesecake.
I will.
We'll see you next time, everyone. Take care.
You'll enjoy burgers with all the fixings, plus French fries, beer, wine, soft drinks, cheesecake for dessert.
Oh my God.
There's more. You're going to spend the night at the sanctuary. Pillows, blankets. Oh my God.